Today we are going to be looking at using Purple Mash for coding. You will notice on the front screen here, we've put coding in a block where you can easily find it. We're going to start really simply if we go into coding, and I'll just give you an overview of what each one of our programs does. We've got ToCode, which is the most popular coding section in Purple Mash. ToCode is block-based coding, but also transforms at some point into JavaScript written code. We've got ToLogo, which is logo programming. It's a very basic graphic interface for coding. It was developed in the late 60s. It probably is I think it is actually the oldest graphic interface for coding. So if you've never seen Logo before, some of you might have used a program in the past called Turtle, and Turtle is exactly Logo. Yeah, so what you do with Turtle or with Logo is you control a little turtle on the screen. It's called a turtle, the object that you're controlling, and you can use it to create geometric shapes or anything that you like. It's just to show the students that what you're typing on the keyboard is actually having an output on the screen. It is used for older grades for geometry. We'll go into that just now. To Go, if you are familiar with things like Bbots or any floor robots, To Go is exactly that, but now put on the screen. So it's the perfect step between using a floor robot and moving into coding on screen. Then Logonator, it's called The Time Crimes of Logonator, this game. It's game-based, so it has a storyline that you have to work through, and the whole thing is based on logo programming. Okay, this can go all the way up to grade 7, even further if you're not used to doing any coding in your school, because it does give all of the skills involved in on-screen programming or learning how to program something that's happening on the screen. Then we've got Mash Club. Mash Club can be used as a student-led coding club. So you can get your digital leaders in the school to run this coding club, or as a teacher, you can run the club yourself. I'm going to start with that in a little while. But first, I will show you what you can see on the bottom here. If you're logged in as a teacher or an admin, you'll see the computing scheme of work coding units. So we have units, what do we have? I think 8 units here. I can't count. Between each unit, there's a knowledge organizer. So those aren't the units. They're just for you to help organize your lessons. And in every single one of these units, we'll give you lesson plans. So if I'm going to open up number 1 here, it says unit 1.7, and unit 1.7 is coding because it's unit 7 of the first computing scheme of work lesson folder. So in our computing scheme of work, which I'll show you where to find a little bit later, we cover everything in computing. So we do things like spreadsheets and databases and typing skills and mouse control. Absolutely anything that you're doing in computing, we cover in the computing scheme of work. So when you see that it's unit 1.7, it's the 7th thing that you're going to be doing in the first part of the computing scheme of work. The computing scheme of work, if you don't have a curriculum for computing, then I would suggest looking at it. It's not something that you have to follow strictly, but it does cover, as I said, everything in computing, and it's a nice way of putting your classes together. So every lesson plan will be set out like this. This is for you as a teacher, obviously, to read through. We have the introduction of how you're going to start teaching coding to your kids, explaining exactly how everything is set out. Now, as I was saying, we do cater for specialist and non-specialist teachers. So if you look at the levels of scaffolding in coding tasks or levels of scaffolded coding tasks, you can use these from the most scaffolded, which will be from a teacher that's never touched coding before in their entire lives, to the least scaffolded, where a teacher knows exactly what they're doing and the kids do have a basic understanding of coding. So you can follow any one of these lesson ideas. Okay. And then we've got the actual lesson plans. So this is going to be year 1 medium-term plan. This is based on the UK year system. So this would be the same pretty much as a mix between grade R and grade 1. But because our curriculums are very different and the age groups where we start teaching kids certain things are very different, we just like to say year one is the first year that you're ever teaching coding, or it's just the right place to start. The older kids will go through year one a lot faster, obviously, because they can read better, they have a better understanding of computational thinking, so they will move through it a lot faster. So you might get through year 1, 2, and maybe even 3 in the first year if you're teaching grade 4s, for example. Okay, every lesson, if you see the blue link, it'll take you to the actual lesson. So as a non-specialist teacher, if you don't know what you're doing with coding, you can read through this lesson basically word for word and teach the lesson. So you'll be able to teach everything here, where the students will think that you're an absolute genius, but you really don't know what's going on, which we understand. And our hope is that we will upskill the teachers at the same time that we're teaching the kids. So as you're reading through it, you'll understand it and you'll remember how to teach it next time. Okay, so the lessons do get obviously more complicated as they go along. And what they start with in lesson 1 will be coding off of the computer. So I'm sure a lot of you have done exercises where you get the children to be, one would be the computer and one would be the programmer, and they get to basically program each other to do certain things. You can read through all of that in here. Okay, so that is where you would find the coding units of the scheme of work. I would suggest using them if you've never taught computing before. Once we have a proper coding curriculum in South Africa, we will map everything that's in that curriculum and all of the objectives and outcomes to our programs, so that if you are already using to code, don't worry, you don't have to use anything else. We will make sure that you know how to use it, in terms of exactly what the government wants from you and more. Right, jumping into Coding Club. Okay, basically the MASH Club is, like I said, it can be used as an after-school coding club led by students, or you can use it to run your lessons. So because it doesn't start from the most basic, we would suggest having some sort of coding knowledge as a child, even if you've gone through the chimp version of To Code, which I'll show you now. You would start on To Code, in the MASH Club. What's really cool about the MASH Club is if we go into sessions, you'll see that there's 8 sessions, and each of these sessions can take a week. So this can be 8 weeks of coding. Okay, if it takes your kids a bit longer, you can make this into 16 weeks. When we go into the session, you'll have a printable PDF for yourself to print out if you like, and then the session that's online for you to go through, and then the example of the finished game. This is the game that you would have made by going through this entire lesson. And like I said, this lesson can take you a week or longer. So because it's made to be student-led, all of the instructions are very well laid out. You don't need any help from anyone at all. This is a really nice thing now that we kind of putting the learning in the hands of, or teaching in the hands of the parents that don't have any idea how to teach coding. They'll just have to read through this. So what's nice about this file is that as you get things done, you would cross them out that you'll be done. So they'll work through this whole thing sequentially to be able to go through this entire lesson, which is many pages long, and come out on the other side with a working example of a piece of code. So this is the code that the students would have written by the time they finish that lesson. Yeah, and if we play that, I don't exactly, okay, you've got to just kind of direct that little wizard to run away. And that's just unit 1. You'll see when we go to C code, they're also going to learn how to write in JavaScript. So not everything that happens into code is just block-based. We're eventually going to get them to understand and write JavaScript coding. I know this looks scary for some of you that have never done coding before, but I promise you we work through the entire program step by step. So every single one of these functions, you'll understand what it is and how to write it in JavaScript. We also in January released our Python in Pieces program. So Python in Pieces is aimed at intermediate, senior, and high, and higher than senior phase, I forget what that is, all the way up to adults. So it has a completely different interface to what Purple Mash looks like. It's a lot more grown-up looking, and it teaches you Python programming. Python is the fastest growing programming language in the world. So if you are interested in having a look at that, you're more than welcome to open it up for you for a couple of months while you're off. Okay, so we've looked at the sessions in Mash Club. There are principal resources. These are really nice things for you to use in your classroom, so you can, sorry, classroom, not going to be there, but when you do get back to class, you can print a poster for your Mash Club, and then the Mash Club certificate you can use even now when the kids are at home. So it's an interactive PDF, so you can put the student's name, and you can sign it, you can put the date, and then you can save this and send it out to kids. So with our new edition of being able to upload files to Purple Mash, external files, you can you can save these as PDFs and then upload them into each pupil's folder so that they can get a certificate as they've done certain things. Okay. What I didn't mention about the Mash Club is that it's not only a coding club, it's also a blogging club. So everything in these 8 sessions are going to teach you coding and blogging together. Eventually, in the last session, you will be able to share your code over a blog and make it available for everyone to see. Okay, so that is basically what Mash Club is. Going into the simple things, I'm going to start with To-Go. As I said, To-Go is like a floor robot, but now we're moving on to the screen. Okay, you can start with To-Go and create your own activities for your kids. So you can use any of these backgrounds, you can put in any turtle that you like, and you can make basically anything. A nice way that you can use it is to, if you go to make my own, you can upload a picture. So even if you go to something like Google Maps and you upload a map of the area that you live in, or if you upload an aerial view of your school, you can create an activity around getting around the school to certain places and things like that. So if I go to challenges, challenges will give us 8 challenges to move through to get through To-Go. And it starts off very simply. If your kids can't read yet, they can use this little speaker and they can hear the instructions. And it's as simple as in this first exercise, getting the fish to go to the treasure chest by using arrows 1 click at a time. So simple instructions to the computer. Okay, when you go to try another, you'll see every challenge that we go through does get, the elements get added to it. So now we're going to start by just using the arrows and counting. Right. Oops. Okay, if we go just a couple of challenges further, you'll see we eventually get to a point where they can string a whole lot of instructions together. So before we jumping into something like To-Code, we really want them to understand the instructional thinking behind coding and what it actually is. It's just giving your computer instructions of what to do. And then we're showing them at a point that you're giving them a whole load of instructions at a time that they're going to run through as a program. As always, the videos are on the top right-hand side of the screen, and it'll give you all of the instructions. So there's a lot that I haven't gone into in To-Go, but the videos will show you absolutely everything. So when you get in there, please look at them yourselves. I think there's a lot more important things to get onto. Okay, then we've got To-Logo. As I said, if you've used Turtle before or any other logo programming platform, you'll be quite familiar with this. You can put backgrounds in, you can change what this thing is. So if you've just moved from Bbots, for example, if you want to put a little Bbot on the screen, you can put in backgrounds, and you can start it off with a simple background to make it more like To-Go. But what we're doing here is we're actually now inputting the instructions ourselves. So logo commands look like this. It'll give you a very good idea when you hover over it of exactly what it does. So there's nothing scary about it. If we want to move things around, we just say FD5 and this guy will move forward 5 spots. You can see what I'm doing. You can do very simple command like that. You can also put in repeat commands. So if I had to put in something like repeat and then in brackets FD5 RT, sorry, repeat 4, and then in brackets FD5 RT90, close brackets, it would repeat 4 times, going forward 5 and then turning right 5 times, which would make a square, for example. You can then use procedures to create things. So if I make a repeat command and I label it square and I write the procedure, when I go in here, because I've created a procedure and I write square, it'll run that procedure that I've made in the right-hand side. So it'll make a square instead of writing the whole command if I'm making more than 1 square, for example. Okay. Again, please go and watch the videos for this because the amount of things that you can do in Logo are incredible. Then we've got the Logonator, the time crimes of Logonator. We have a lot of documents for teachers in the teacher section. You'll have the whole guide to Logo. Again, we're looking after you if you've never done any programming at all in your life or if you've done nothing in Logo. So we will go and everything in the teacher section here, these are the completed tasks. So you can see what the answers are to everything. When we go into the game, okay, it will play a little video that will explain exactly what's happening. Basically, I think the Logonator is coming to take over the Earth or something like that. And when you go into this as a student, all of these will be locked. You'll only be able to do 1 game at a time. So you're going to have to finish level 1 before you can get to level 2. As a teacher, you can see all levels open yourself. So when you go into it, I'm not going to start right in the beginning. If we had to go to one a little bit further in, you'll see that you're going to have to now outline all of these shapes. So there's a lot to do with degrees and geometric shapes and all sorts of things while bringing in your code in. So you're going to have to write the code to draw over everything. Once you've completed every section, it obviously gets harder as you go along. There's always a checklist of the mission objectives, so they can keep looking to see what they need to do. And as they complete a certain mission, it'll tick off what they've done until they've passed the level. Okay, that is time crimes. Then to code. So I always keep to code for last because it is our most popular section of Purple Mash in coding, at least. So you've got your teacher section. In teachers, you've got the to code video tutorials. This will talk you through absolutely everything in to code. So I'm not going to show you everything because you can watch these videos. And the nice thing about watching these videos, you can watch them over and over again, and you'll eventually become an absolute professional. If we go into resources and solutions, we have the guided lessons and solutions. So if your learners are ever stuck, you can always go to the solutions and you can see exactly what the solution to every single activity is instead of you having to try and figure it out with them. Again, we like to make you look like a professional and that you know what you're doing. They think you're a coding superhero and you will learn as you go along. Then the free code plans and resources. This is where you will find exactly what we were talking about just now, the coding scheme of work. So we try and make it accessible in more than one place. In program design, to step away from coding for a second, not every single thing about programming and computational thinking is about writing lines of code. A lot of it is to do with instructional design and planning. So we have all of these writing templates here for you to actually plan your code and plan your game so that you're not just winging it as you go along. These will be applicable for when you've finished all of the activities, and you're using free code to write whatever code you like. Okay, and then we have a coding certificate that you can then also give out to your kids, and some flashcards that you can send to them. If you're using something like Google Classroom, you can upload these flashcards daily so that they're getting a different, learning different coding vocabulary daily. So that's the teacher section mostly. Then we go to challenges. Okay, so challenges is going to start off really simply. You're going to always start, please always, even if you're starting with your grade 5s or 6s, always start at level 1 chimp. So you're going to start in the first level with the first activity. It's very, very easy, especially for older kids. It's sometimes a little bit too simple, but it's like building a house. If you don't have the right foundation, your house is going to fall down. Exactly the same thing with coding. So you're going to go into fun with fish, and it is as simple as making the fish move right. Okay, so in the lesson plan, it will talk you through exactly what to do here. It's going to say that you're going to explain to your pupils that they can go and look at the design. The design is already set out for them. You can move this thing. This is called a sprite, by the way. You can move it around, but it is there and it's labeled. You don't have to worry about doing any of the back-end stuff yet, or the graphic, any of the graphics for your code. It's all there. So if we go in, for your younger kids, they can also listen to the instructions. So it's just going to say make the tuna fish move right. So we're going to bring the tuna into the coding panel, and we're going to say move right. Okay, if you have covered all of this before, I do apologize, but we will move on quite quickly. Okay, if you've got something right, it's going to let you go to the next level. How we assess into code is that every single activity starts with 5 stars, and you can use hints. So if you don't know what you're doing, you can use a hint, and every time you use a hint, you lose a star. So if you're getting some kids that are flying through all of the coding activities, and you think that they are now completed with chimp, you can go into the teacher section and see they might have used every single hint for every single activity, and you can see they might have 1 star for everything. And then you can monitor the fact that they haven't actually learned anything and tell them to start again. Okay. Jumping forward a little bit, I'll go into vehicles. Okay. Everything you can set as a to-do. If you haven't joined the session on setting work as to-dos and marking work online, please do so, or we will get the video up as soon as possible. So what's happening here is it's going to tell you to make a motorway, make the vehicles move at different speeds, set each vehicle to a number between 1 and 10. A huge thing with code is that we're also working on reading and understanding. So it's got a lot of comprehension involved. You'll see this is where the hint is that I was talking about, by the way. To get back to that, you just click on a question mark on the top right-hand side, and you'll get back to the screen with the hint. So you're going to have to read and understand exactly what the instruction is. So make the vehicles move at different speeds, set between 1 and 10. So we'll bring something in here, and now you'll see we have a lot more options to choose from. Like I said, I just jumped forward about 5 activities. So please know that we do kind of build up to this point. We're not just moving from move the fish right to this. So we're going to choose the speed, as it said, set to, because it says set the speed to a number between 1 and 10. Okay, and when we play that, we'll see our cars moving. We can now go to the C code section. So if you have some children that are a little bit more experienced than others, you can go now, and this is what it looks like in JavaScript to set something at a speed, set an object to move at a speed. So knowing what it looks like and knowing what these are labeled, we can go and input ourselves. Okay, the reason why the screen has gone red is because it's a live debugging system. So instead of you getting it wrong and then having to go back and look and then come back to this code, it's telling you already by the screen being red that that piece of code will not work. Okay, so we'll go.
The cool thing with getting the code wrong also teaches children that it's okay to make mistakes. And if we can transfer that learning to other environments, it would just help our children in so many instances that they don't have to stress, because you can always go back, relearn and fix what you've done. And that's what's so cool, that you can show children in terms of coding.
Agreed.
It's also a great space to teach them about copying and pasting, funnily enough. Control-C, Control-V, you use that a lot as a coder.
Right, so you'll see I made a mistake in my code, so nothing underneath the lines that I've messed up are going to work. If we go back and fix it, everything will go back to work. Now, what's also quite unique about code is that anything that you change in the JavaScript will automatically bring the blocks in. Okay, so you'll see I didn't spell buggy like it's meant to be spelled. And there's brought in all the blocks, and we can now run our code and see the script of what we've written. Okay, so please don't get your kids to just live in block coding. I do understand it's very important to understand the logic behind programming, but they're not learning anything really with written code if they never write in code. It's as simple as that. So we're still in, you'll see we're in level 1, chimp. At the end of every level, you get a free code section. So this free code chimp will allow you to code anything that you want, but using only the functions that we've learned up to this point. Okay, so unlike other coding programs that will give you all of the blocks all of the time right from the beginning, we're only going to give them to you as you've learned them. So by the time we get to the end of free code chimp level 1, you would know exactly what every single one of these things does, and you can go and create any code that you like. And you go into your design, you can bring in a background, you can bring in objects and sprites and characters, and you can create really, really nice things. So moving on from there, it goes into level 2, Gibbon, then Gorilla. That does get quite complex. We also have pre-made debugging exercises. So if you want to teach debugging, you don't have to go and create code and then break it and send it to the kids to go and fix. It's already broken, and you can just set these as tasks for the kids to do, and they would have to go and find the problem in the code and fix it. Okay, so problem solving is all there. Right, then we also have, after the sessions, if you want to go to free code, you can find all of the free code coding panels here. You can also find the game planner here, which we discussed before. It's a really good idea to plan your code before you do it. And a nice little pre-made scenes that you can use here. So you'll see all of these backgrounds are set up. So kind of like the activities, but with preset scenes, and you can create any code that you like or anything to happen to a scene that's already created for you. So there are a lot of steps towards becoming a programmer, you know, in quotation marks here. You want to be a programmer by the time you leave primary school. We are giving you all the steps to actually create your own games and create your own programs and write JavaScript code in a nice, easy way to understand everything step by step. You can also go into coding principles. So for your older children, you can learn things like handling input, counting machines, calculation machines, concatenation, and coding number sequences. And again, everything is accessible. Games and quizzes will be games that are based on specific pieces of code and things that you've learned. And the quizzes are things that you can use to assess your kids to make sure that they know exactly what's going on. Okay, so that's basically to code. And that's actually all of the tools that are in our coding section. Cool. So just to go out of coding, I'm repeating myself again, but you need to remember that not everything about coding is written code. In all of our tools, you can find sections. So if I go to our coding section in tools, this should actually be in our coding section. I think we'll move it later today. The To-Chart is a flow diagram app that you can use for many, many things, but it's really nice to create a flow diagram planning your code. So if you want to see what a simple one looks like, if we're going to do, let's do a subroutine. Okay, that's not a simple one. I'll take that back. But basically, what we're doing here is showing, different directions I think things can go. So if you were in the session that we did with To Create a Story, when we did the adventure story, and you could see that by choosing different paths, you could get different outputs. This is exactly what you're going to be doing in something like To-Chart, but on a higher level plan. So you can use these for your older kids to properly plan what they're doing. And then you can also use To Create a Story, adventure story, for your younger children to get different outputs. Okay, so that's mostly what I'm going to talk about in To Code. I think actually that's everything I'm going to talk about in To Code. But while we're here, I'm going to quickly point you towards the computing scheme of work. Okay. The computing scheme of work, as I said, is based on the UK years. So you can just look through it and find what is relevant and applicable to your classes. Don't worry if your grade 2s are only doing something at the reception stage. They will learn and they will catch up soon enough. So if we go into just year 2 here, you'll see that it starts with coding, but then we also cover things like online safety, spreadsheets, questioning, effective searching, creating pictures, making music, and presenting ideas. So we really are covering absolutely everything in computing. And every single one of these things will give you lesson plans to teach the subject. So when you have some time, if you have some time, I do know you probably don't have much time these days, I would suggest looking through that and carrying on with teaching technology and computing, even though you're not seeing the kids. I have noticed that a lot of people are focusing a lot more on curriculum-based work, which I understand, but there's no reason to not still teach the technology and computing skills while the kids are not at school, especially with a tool like this. You can just set the to-dos. And what's great about most of these things is that if you are using something like Google Classroom or Microsoft Teams or anything along those lines, you can set this work and they can just get on with it themselves and do the work without getting any parent involvement or having to worry the parents and getting them to understand or learn what they're doing. So, and obviously you can always just use Pipamash by itself if you like, because we have the to-dos and the marking and everything that you need. You don't have to use an external program. If you haven't used or haven't taught any coding before, it is a good idea to start teaching things like recipes and basic instructional or following instructions and instructional thinking. And we do have in the topics section, or sorry, in To Publish Plus, we have things like recipe templates and things like that that you can push out. So do look through all of the coding lesson plans. All of these kind of ideas are there, but you don't have to always jump right into coding. It's a lot about comprehension and listening and understanding and following instructions and doing things in the right order. But that's the last thing I'll say. If anyone thinks I've missed anything out, please let me know. There is obviously a lot more depth, as I always say, to what I've shown you now, but all of the answers to those questions and to see more depth, you'll have to actually go into the program itself and you can watch all of the videos. And everyone will use the program differently, obviously. So you don't have to do exactly what we say.
Now, thanks. That was fantastic. I think just to show people the range of tools and explain about computational thinking is so important. That coding is is really complex, and that the computational thinking can be taught without a computer is really important for people to know. And all the other skills, how it relates to your language and maths and all the other things. If any of you want to hop into any of the other sessions or have seen sessions and didn't register for them, just let us know, and we can add you to those. We say thank you for your time and for being involved today. Have a good day.